Hello, everyone. My name is Nikhil Swaminathan, and I'm the Senior Product Manager at AWS Mobile. Today, I'm going to talk about Mobile Hub, a tool we built to help developers cloud enable their apps fast. I'm going to walk through a new console and CLI experience we built and released in November of 2017. So the way we built Mobile Hub is the way we do anything at AWS. We started with the customer. So talking to customers, we realized that a lot of mobile developers only spend a small amount of their time working on unique features for their app and spend a lot of time managing infrastructure and tools. That's kind of what we wanted to change. So we built Mobile Hub, the fastest way to build apps that scale. We started with the iOS and Android offerings, so having the ability to cloud enable iOS and Android apps. And again, in November, as part of our big release, we launched support for web apps and React Native apps. So web apps can include frameworks like React.js, Vue, and Angular. There are 3 simple steps to cloud enabling your app. 1, pick a platform. So start with a platform. You can start with no app, or you can start with an existing app. Set up your backend using either the Mobile Hub or Mobile CLI. Both do the same things. You can provision resources within the AWS ecosystem fast and easily. Step 3, connect to that backend. So using the native SDKs for iOS and Android and the newly released open source AWS Amplify library for JavaScript. That's web and React Native developers. You can cloud enable your app with the features you enabled in your backend. Let's actually see how this works. So as a user who logs on to aws.amazon.com/mobile, the first thing you can do is when you hit get started. You sign in right here. And right off the bat, you have 2 options. So you have your projects, or you have starter kits and tutorials. So creating a project is for someone who already has an app. So if you're coming to Mobile Hub with an existing app and you just want to cloud enable it, create a project. If you're just looking to kind of kick the tires and figure out what our service offering is, or want a place to start because you don't have an app, you can use one of our starter kits or follow along with the step-by-step tutorial. So the difference between a starter kit and a tutorial. So a starter kit takes you to that end state. So it gives you a fully functional app right off the bat. Whereas a tutorial gives you a front-end app and then walks through steps to add that backend. So for the purposes of today's demo, I'm going to walk through a web app, which is the restaurant ordering starter kit. So what we'll be building in the next few minutes is a React application, which is set up with user registration and sign-in, has a Dynamo DB table, and you're fronted by API gateway. So just to show you what that architecture looks like, we have all these available on GitHub open source. So you have a web app that's hosted on S3 via CloudFront distribution. And then you authenticate with Amazon Cognito, and your backend is entire serverless. So it's you're writing Lambda functions fronted by API gateway. So for those of you who don't really know a lot about serverless framework, serverless is a way to manage your backend without actually worrying about maintaining your own servers. It's fully managed. All you do is write your functions in the cloud. So let's actually go ahead and get started. So the prerequisites here is you need an AWS account. You need to be set up with Node.js because we're running the server we're running is an Express server. It's an Express application, and this is where we're going to kind of demo the new AWS Mobile CLI. So this is available by NPM, and just getting started is super easy. So all I do is I go AWS Mobile, start my project React. So I'm just going to run that command in my command line. Ask me what I want to name my project. Let's name my project Webinar React. while it creates, let me just tell you what it's doing. So we have Mobile Hub and we have the CLI. So what the CLI is doing is that it's reaching out to Mobile Hub to create a project with all the resources you saw here. So what we're doing is with just that one command, we're provisioning all these AWS resources for you, so you don't have to worry about actually setting up these resources individually. If you were to have to go and do this individually, you'd have to go to each of these different services, enable them, and then configure them together. And here we're just giving you one seamless experience via the command line where you can create. So that's why it takes a little bit of time. So I mean, the steps are super easy. Once it's done, all I'm going to do is CD into my project and do an AWS Mobile run, which will actually launch launch my web app on local host. So the advantage with starter kits is that they kind of give you the entire app right out of the box. So you don't have to do, there's like no coding required, and you get a fully functional app that works with AWS. So there we go. Like, so it took a few minutes, but we're all set to go. So why don't we actually check out, before we actually run the app, let's see what we set up. So if I go AWS Mobile Console, it'll open. Oh, sorry, I forgot to CD into my project. AWS Mobile Console. It'll open up the Mobile Hub project that it created. And as you can see, it created a web app. And on the back end, we have authentication, NoSQL data, which is a Dynamo DB table, Cloud Logic, which basically is API gateway proxying all the calls to Lambda, and hosting and streaming. So hosting and streaming actually is a pretty cool feature. What it allows you to do, it actually allows you to host your web apps over S3, and it's distributed via a CloudFront CDN. So it's fast, and users can access the website from all over the world. Great. So let's actually go ahead and see this app running. So all I need to run is AWS Mobile Run. And it installs all the dependencies. So the AWS Mobile Run command is to actually run the project locally. So it first installs the dependencies and then starts the server, and very soon we'll actually see a fully functional app. While we wait, I mean, I can also show you a little more of what we set up. So let me start with auth. So within auth, by default, we set up email and password using Cognito user pools. And if we look at what we did, we had a sign-in method for email. We had multi-factor auth disabled and a minimum password length of 8. So you could theoretically do all these steps individually. But what the starter kits enable you to do is just start with a fully provisioned backend, and we give you front end code, so you actually see how that front end and back end are wired up. All right, so it seems like the project is running. Let's actually go and see if we can. I think Webpack's still doing something, so it might take a little bit longer. There we go. I think it compiled successfully. And there you go. This is a fully functional web app with an authentication screen. So I can actually sign up. So let me choose username, password. So by default, it tells you the passwords don't match if they don't. And I can do email. So because I had multi-factor authentication set up, I will get a verification code. And there you have it. This is your serverless restaurant web app built on React.js. You can do cool, like just to show you some of the functionality. If I insert the restaurants, this is what this will do is that it'll actually insert restaurants into your Dynamo table it's talking to on the cloud. So all these button interactions, so the button on click is actually hitting an API gateway endpoint that will call list restaurants. So let me show you how that, so this is listing a bunch of restaurants in the area. Let me show you how that actually looks in the source code. So this is my project. So as you can see, I have a source folder, which is where my front end code goes. And so what do we have here? We have the restaurant system, the restaurants. So if you look at the table of content, actually the menu, right? You'll see that within your menu class, you can fetch the menu list for a restaurant. So that happens when I go and click into a particular restaurant. So that's fetching the menu list. So that's using the get item API, the API endpoint. So all our APIs are defined in the AWS Mobile JS folder. So this is basically, this contains the description of your backend. So as you can see, there's a cloud API folder. And if you look at the app.js, here's all your endpoints. So you have the app, you have a post function, you have a delete function, and gets for your orders. So these are basically describing all the different endpoints you have for your API. So just again, to kind of take a step back and see how this works, we haven't pushed anything to the cloud yet, but if we start at API Gateway, that's where we've described all our APIs. API Gateway is just proxying all those calls to lambdas, which actually have the functions I showed you. So all these functions get deployed as a Lambda function, which then interface with DynamoDB. Great. So now that we have that working, let's actually go ahead and do this part of the app deploy process, where we will now publish our web app to S3. So if I go, sorry. So this will basically build my app locally. So that's what that does. And it also it'll check to see if there were backend changes. Right now, there were no local changes detected to my backend because I haven't edited any of the files. But imagine if I went ahead and edited one of these files, right? If I added another parameter, for example, right here, and I edited that file and I did a publish, it would actually zip up the backend, all the lambdas, upload that to the cloud as well. So you would have both your front end and back end that get deployed using the publish command. And what you'll see very soon is that what this does is that it takes your front end code and deploys it to an S3 bucket, which you had enabled in your project. If we were to go back to Mobile Hub, this is your web app. You can see that there's a hosting and streaming feature. So if you look at the contents of your bucket, what the publish command is doing is that it's basically just taking your app, building it, and uploading it to your S3 bucket. So it looks like the build succeeded. So now all it's doing is uploading the files. And there you go. The same web app you were running locally is now running on the cloud. It's on an S3 bucket served over a CloudFront distribution, which means it's fast and it can be accessed anywhere in the world. Yeah, it can be accessed anywhere in the world. Great. So now that we've done that, let me actually go ahead and let's just log in again to make sure that I was able to log in locally. Can I log in on the server on a website? Yeah. So I got a code. Oops. Sorry. And there you go. The same web app is active on the web. Now let me just show you another cool feature we built. So a lot of times with web apps, you don't know how they're going to perform on the cloud. So leveraging the fleet we have available with AWS Device Farm. So if you haven't heard of AWS Device Farm, think of the device farm as a set of real devices in the cloud that you can run tests against. So typically you can run iOS and Android tests, but you can also now run web application tests. So we enable with one simple command line option, we run a free test for you where we launch your web app on 5 real devices and give you basic information about your app's performance. So we give you, so this typically is going to take between 5 to 7 minutes to run. But what I do have is I have a completed test which I can show you the results for. Great, so here we have a completed test. So as you can see, the time to first meaningful paint is the primary metric we give you. So the first meaningful paint is actually the time when the page first loads. So it's the primary content appears on the screen, and it is the primary metric for user perceived loading experience. So we give you the average milliseconds it took. It took 17 milliseconds. Oh, the published test just launched, which is why it's running. But so yeah, when the publish is completed, and as you can see, we're showing you that it's running a performance test on real devices. But I'll just go back to the completed test so you can actually see the results. It gives you the time to first meaningful paint on iOS versus Android, and the results on 5 devices. So we run it on an iPad Air 2, the iPhone 5s, iPhone 8, Pixel 2, and the Galaxy S6. We also give you screenshots so you can see if there are any layout issues on different devices, because all different devices have different screen resolutions. Your web app might have some problems on an iPad versus a Google Pixel 2. So all of this is free. So you can run performance tests as long as you publish your web app to S3. You can run these. You can take advantage of these tests for free every time you run, every time you deploy your app. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to kind of build an end-to-end experience around develop your app, develop your front end and your back end, build it, test it on real devices, and deploy it to the cloud. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with Mobile Hub in general. So you can, besides the web app, you have similar capabilities with iOS, Android, and React Native apps. So you could have multiple apps deployed to with your same backend. So that's all I have for today's demo. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and I'd be happy to take any questions.